Gentlemen, now go to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hurd, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'd like to pick up on Mr. Grothman's lines of questioning. And let me preface by I spent the majority of my adult life managing sources in the CIA. Now it's different. It was foreigners and it was overseas. And my question is, how do you not have a receipt for a payment? And let's start with you, Mr. Patterson.
So the issues, and I don't have a full understanding of the missing receipts for payments. I think it was the accounting. I don't know if it was actually missing receipts, but the accounting that they were able to look at. I would like to follow up certainly with my counterpart to come across that it shouldn't be possible. The question is it physically a missing form? I don't believe that it would be possible.
Mr. Horowitz, do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, I think, from our standpoint, it was missing data, missing information that we couldn't confirm because of the absence of the document. It doesn't mean the document wasn't perhaps created earlier and lost, but we don't know. I think it's fair to say it's the challenge we had in working through the system and understanding what was missing and how do we learn what is going on here.
So Mr. Horowitz, do you feel that within the DEA that there is a clearly established criteria to be used to determine whether money being paid to a confidential source was valuable or worth it?
No, I don't think that was going on, that was one of the issues, that there were success payments for successes, but beyond that, there weren't evaluations going on of how many misses there were, how many times were packages open, how many times were people pulled out of line that resulted in.
And where you use those examples, pulled out a line, going to package, is that because we're talking specifically about limited use, or is this the payments to people that are trying to infiltrate some of these gangs and these criminal organizations?
Many of the issues we found were in the limited use category. So that's where we saw over and over again our area of concern on this issue in particular. Separately, the subsources may have been in a different category. Much more like what you're suggesting, which were more traditional criminal use of those individuals that present a slightly different issue.
Mr. Patterson, do you feel that DEA has a clear criteria on what is a successful use of a limited use confidential source?
Just specific to limited use?
Yeah.
So look, there's a number of issues related to limited use. One is obviously direction. That is a definition that we are working with our chief counsel to get out to the employees. It has got to be a one-way flow of information. We've made our employees aware of that, but again, we need to get the policy correct on this. In terms of payments to the individuals, that is directed, and although limited use requires a lower level of oversight for establishment, those now informants fall under the same policy as all informants.
So the DEA officer that is involved in the recruitment of limited source, are promotions based on the number of sources you recruit, whether it's any limited use or not?
No, sir.
What is the criteria for moving up the chain?
For promotion?
Yes.
Within DEA? Promotion is obviously based on performance, and depending at what levels that are done, there is also additional testing that's done.
So is it number of arrests, the amount of dope you get off the streets? Are there any issues like?
No, I mean, the current administrator has made it very clear that we do not use a metrics-type system for promotions, that our mandate is to essentially work the biggest and best cases.
So how does headquarters evaluate the approval process to go forward with the recruitment of a source, whether it's limited or not?
How does headquarters validate that? So in the field, when they essentially complete not the request, the establishment paperwork, that is reviewed at the headquarters level, and then is assigned a number back to the field.
And is these criterias not used? What criteria are being used to determine whether money should be spent in order to run that source?
So that is, again, administered at the field level up to a certain dollar amount. And again, as I started to explain on the limited use, although there is less oversight in the establishments of these individuals, the financial pieces of this all have the same regulations, which is there are certain approval levels that are able to happen in the field Once they exceed a certain amount.
And there's not, so the problem, Mr. Horowitz, that you're seeing is that there's not a connection between when there is a payment back to what the criteria that was originally used to authorize that payment.
I think we have a couple of concerns based on what we see is that there's really no measurement beyond did you make a seizure and did you get an award beyond, or are you sending us leads that never panned out, right? Does this informant send us 1,000 leads and one pans out, or 10 leads and 10 pan out? The other part of it is we are concerned that when they did their, in the past at least, when they did reviews of long-term sources, when they had committees get together to look at these individuals who got large dollar amounts or were in place for long periods of time, we saw that they were spending less than a minute per source per review, which obviously is not a serious review of that. Now, we've seen changes that have occurred since we issued our audit in the last 2 years in that regard. That was several years ago. But that was indicative, I think, of a significant concern for precisely the reason you indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.